On September 20th, 2013, a chilling 911 call pierced the day in Danville.
911, where's your emergency?
The trembling voice of 9-year-old Andrew Hockensmith urgently reported a robbery. His parents lying shot in the store he knew so well.
Someone is a robber at a pawn shop.
Someone's robbing the pawn shop?
And my parents got shot.
Where is the robber?
He's right here right now.
As the dispatcher's questions were met with fearful uncertainty, the urgency in Andrew's words cut through the static. Each agonizing minute felt like an eternity as the wail of sirens drew nearer.
Where are your parents?
They're dead on the ground. Come here quickly because I'm afraid.
In a few minutes, the police arrived to find the front door locked. With Andrew's guidance, they breached the store, only to be met with a sight that would scar even the most seasoned officers. Michael Hockensmith, Andrew Hockensmith, and Daniel Smith, lying motionless behind the counter, victims of a senseless act of violence. This will forever change the city of Danville. Here is what happened on that fateful day. In May 2013, Michael Hockensmith's dream became a reality as he proudly took ownership of ABC Gold Games and More Pawn Shop. For this devoted husband and father of two, the venture represented far more than just a business. It was a chance to build a legacy for his beloved wife, Angie, the one great love of his life. Meanwhile, Daniel Smith, a charismatic gold broker known for his affable manner, made his rounds through the pawn shops of central Kentucky. Little did he know that his path would soon intersect with the Hockensmiths in the most tragic ways. On that fateful morning, Mike, Angela, and their children found themselves in the crosshairs of their shop when a man entered with a gun. In a brutal act of violence, 3 lives were stolen: Michael, his beloved Angie, and Daniel Smith, whose charm and warmth had endeared him to so many. After the 911 call from 9-year-old Andrew, the police arrived at the scene. The forensic and detectives started to process the scene. In the store, 14.22 shell casings lay scattered around the bodies, and 3.22 caliber bullets were found nearby. Daniel Smith's briefcase sat on the counter. The police also found untouched $1,000 in the cash register. At this point, the officers' suspicions began to shift. Was Daniel Smith the real target? The evidence suggested as much, but they knew this was only the beginning of their investigation. Michael and Angie were shot multiple times in the head and torso. Daniel Smith had a single bullet to the head. All 3 died instantly, their final moments marked by violence and fear. The investigators turned to the next logical step: surveillance footage. Their hopes were dashed quickly. This store had no cameras. The absence of surveillance was more than a hindrance. It was a red flag. Why were there no cameras in a place that desperately needed them? Without the aid of video evidence, the detectives' path forward became less clear. They knew they had to canvass the area, hunting for any external cameras that might have captured the assailants' movements. They also needed to find witnesses who might have seen or heard anything that could shed light on this gruesome mystery. The first witness was an employee from Rainbow Cleaners, a nearby business. She recalled seeing a silver minivan behind the pawn shop, driven by a heavy-set man with a beard. The police searched the area for the van, hoping it might have been abandoned, but found nothing. The next step was notifying the families. Daniel's family described his predictable routine. They mentioned he often carried large amounts of cash, a habit his daughter Crystal constantly worried about. She had repeatedly warned him against it, fearing for his safety. The police were convinced that Daniel was the intended target, prompting them to track his last movements. Before visiting the pawn shop in Danville, Daniel had stopped at Lawson's jewelry store in Hardinsburg, Kentucky. The police traveled to Lawson's and noticed surveillance cameras above the door and outside the store. Reviewing the footage, they saw Daniel entering at 8:16 a.m., looking cheerful and carrying his briefcase. He walked to the back of the store, disappearing from view.
And then once we started following Dan Smith, we were able to say, boom, he was here at this time on this date, like clockwork.
At 8:39 a.m. he exited. Switching to the outside camera, the police found nothing suspicious.
He was here at this time on this date, like clockwork.
The scene was tense, and the investigation was hanging on these fragile threads of evidence.
They have surveillance images of the suspect. They only say he's a white male between his 40s and 50s, heavy-set with a potbelly, wearing a green camo jacket. If you have any information, you're asked to call the Danville police.
At this point, the detective had to depend on the only eyewitness in the store that day, 9-year-old Andrew. Detective Adge Mullins sat down with Andrew. His small face was tense as he recounted the horrifying events. He had gone to the store with his parents and sister. Dan had entered with his suitcase full of money. Then, a man with a gun burst in, ordering everyone to the ground. He pointed at the suitcase, demanded it from Dan, and then shot him.
Get on the ground. And we all did because we was petrified. Me, Mom, and my sister all huddled up to a corner.
Andrew described hearing his father shout, "Stop it!" and his mother begging the man not to hurt the children. Angie had told Andrew to take his sister and run to the back.
And like a dart. Dad was like, "Please stop." So that happened, and he started rolling around until he wasn't. He stopped. But then Dan Smith was next, and then he was going to...
Andrew said he ran as fast as he could. Michael and Angie were both shot as well.
And my mom, she told me, like, to go in the back with my sister. So I do. I crawl all the way back to the office. And I sit my sister on the couch. I'm sitting right beside her. Of course, shaken up, and...
As Andrew talked about the shooting, he described the gunshots as fake darts, and the detective realized he was talking about a silencer on the gun. Andrew didn't know the man, but said he was bigger than his dad, wore a green jacket, and had a fake yellow beard. His description matched the one given by the employee from Rainbow Cleaners, a chilling consistency. The motive remained elusive. The police still couldn't pinpoint the intended target. The police were still unsure who the intended target was. They dug into the background of the pawn shop. Michael, Andrew's father, was the co-owner, along with a man named Steve Devine. It was peculiar that Steve, usually present on Friday mornings, had not been there that day. When questioned, Steve said he had planned to go in but stayed home due to severe allergies. When asked about the lack of surveillance cameras, he explained that the previous owner, Alan Keith, had taken them when he left, and they hadn't been replaced yet. Alan Keith had known Michael for about 15 years and was a local pastor. Steve was eventually ruled out. His family confirmed he was homesick and didn't own a silver minivan. However, the police extended their search, determined to find more surveillance footage of the silver van. They discovered a rental business with cameras that captured a silver van at 8:45 a.m. It was an older model, squared in the back. The footage was grainy, making the license plate unreadable, but it matched the description. Next, the police checked footage from Ephraim McDowell Hospital, focusing on an hour before the murders. At 8:17 a.m., the silver van appeared on screen. It showed up again at 8:56 a.m. The police realized the van was circling the area, possibly waiting for something or someone to go to the shop. The tension was palpable. The detectives were piecing together a puzzle with missing pieces. The circling van suggested premeditation, a chilling indication that the murders were not random. In a bold move, the Danville police issued a public appeal for any information about the silver van. The pressure was on, and the community's eyes were now wide open, the hunt for the killer intensifying. But what happened next forever altered the case. A new suspect emerged.
Between you and me, brother, they were crooked people. They went into it with the whole point from day one to take over that business from me.
On September 24th, 4 days after the brutal murders, Detective Keith Peel received a call that sent chills down his spine. The caller was Tracy Harold, a pastor from Michigan. Tracy had stumbled upon a Facebook post about the murders and immediately recognized the name of the pawn shop. It was the same shop once owned by his friend, Alan Keith. What Tracy shared next was deeply unsettling.
They ain't innocent. It cost me a lot of money.
So they seemed upset?
Very, yes, sir.
Alan revealed he was in Danville on the day of the murders, supposedly picking up medication for his wife. He expressed regret about getting Michael into the business and had warned Michael against bringing his family to the shop, citing concerns about a potential armed robbery. However, the most shocking statement was yet to come. Alan said Michael and Angie had cost him a lot of money. Alan Keith, a man with no criminal history, known to Michael from church, had handed over the business after being diagnosed with brain cancer. But now, his cryptic words and presence in Danville on the day of the murders raised red flags. Detective Peel and his team knew they had to act fast. The police went to the pharmacy where Alan claimed he had been. Inside, they were given access to the surveillance footage. As they watched the screen, at 9:24 a.m., just a few minutes after the 911 call, the camera captured Alan walking in. Alan didn't have a beard or a green jacket on, but this didn't rule him out yet. Moving deeper into Alan's life, the police discovered that he and his wife owned a 28 silver Dodge minivan. This clue led them to Alan's medical records, where they uncovered a stunning revelation. Alan had never been diagnosed with brain cancer, nor did he have a tumor. The whole thing was coming together, but they were still circumstantial. The police needed a break. They got it when they contacted Tracy, who agreed to have another recorded phone call with Alan.
He's been murdered in such a heinous way as what this was. You want to make them, out to be saints. I understand that. But between you and me, brother, they were crooked people.
Is that right?
They went into it with the whole point from day one to take over that business from me. I don't mean to speak ill.
No, hey.
Facts are facts.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I can't tell nobody none of this because what does it make me look?
Yeah.
It makes me look like a perpetrator, see?
Keith knew details about the case that had never been made public. Meanwhile, he mentioned going to a car wash after leaving Danville and was acutely aware that the police were watching him. The police visited the car wash. They reviewed the footage with bated breath. At 10:55 a.m., Alan appeared on the screen, walking to the counter. The suspense built as the minutes ticked by. At 11:25 a.m., Alan was seen driving away in his silver minivan. The net was closing in. Alan Keith was arrested, and this was the community reaction.
We're going to spend the rest of their lives without their parents. Now the young baby will probably grow right through this, but the 9-year-old will have in his memory bank now what happened to his mother and father that day, and that's something that he will carry the rest of his life.
The suspense escalated as Detective Peel prepared to interview him at the Somerset PD. Alan, appearing unnervingly calm, claimed he had no motive to kill the 3 victims. But then, he dropped a bombshell. He confessed he couldn't pass a polygraph test because he had killed before while in the military. These bizarre and unsettling statements hung in the air. Shortly after, Alan asked for a lawyer. Then the day of the hearing came in court. While in court, he revealed why he called.
That's the reason that I'm calling Pastor Harold to talk to him about it, to get these things off of my chest in a private manner. I'm calling at his invitation. I was speaking to him on a church phone in a church office. I believe these things to be private, and with the hopes that he would do as he had always done, give me some advice, give me some spiritual guidance.
A warrant was swiftly obtained for Alan Keith's pawn shop. Inside, the search was meticulous and intense. The officers discovered money and money bands that traced back to Daniel Smith. The search spiked when they found .22 shell casings. Each piece of evidence was a nail in the coffin. Alan Keith was charged with 3 counts of murder, burglary, and first-degree robbery. The weight of the charges was immense. In 2017, just before his trial, Alan Keith pleaded guilty. The courtroom was thick with a sense of finality as he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.